Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Jacobson, Senior Documentary Programmer, AFI Festivals, and I want to welcome you to AFI Docs 2021 and the AFI Docs Industry Forum, and to this session, Making Films More Accessible to All Audiences. First, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor of the forum, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, our AFI members for their support, and you, our audience. Of course, I also want to thank our moderator and all of our panelists for participating, as well as our ASL interpreters and our live captioner. Please note that if you do have questions, and we encourage questions, please include those in the chat for the Q&A at the end. Today's moderator, Al-Mohamed, is an author, filmmaker, and disability policy strategist. She's a founding member of Forward Doc, Documentary Filmmakers with Disabilities, and a member of the board of Docs in Progress. She's joined by our panelists, Jason, Jim, Erin, Ira, Renee, and Isaac. They'll all be introducing themselves in just a moment. Day, I want to just say thank you so much for leading our discussion today. It's all yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. I'm super excited, and I'm hoping those of you out here watching are equally excited. I think making films more accessible to all audience is going to be amazing. And more than that, it's actually going to be informative, because this is the way the industry is going. And you know what? What better way than for us to be prepared? So as you said, my name is Al-Mohamed. My pronouns are she, her, hers. For my image description, I'm an Arab American woman, brown skin with fabulously curly black hair. And I have you know, I dressed up in a suit jacket for all of you guys out here. I am actually coming to you from the lands of the Pamunkey, Powhatan, and the Anacostan. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, or should be, those are the ancestral lands of what is today called Washington, D.C. And so that's kind of teeing up that is. And so I'm going to pause now, because I can't do it well enough myself. So I'm going to actually have the panelists introduce themselves. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody, and we will open up with Renee and Ira, if they could tell us a little bit about themselves to start us off.
Thanks, Day. It's a pleasure to be here with you and on the panel with the rest of the panelists. My name is Ira Miller. I'm the Media Access Group at GBH production manager of the Boston office. I'm a mature white male with a neatly trimmed gray speckled pandemic beard, recently cut hairstyle, and I'm wearing a black crew neck short sleeve shirt, and I'm happy to be here. Renee?
And I am Renee Ruthell. I'm a describer at the Media Access Group. I am a woman with blonde hair and glasses, and I am also very happy to be here.
All right, fantastic. One of the things I love is that you guys have a decades-long history with accessibility and film and media in general. I'm wondering if you could just kind of set us up. What are we talking about here? What is, what is this specifically?
Sure. Dave, there's just so much to cover here. So I'm going to sort of combine all those items: access, technology, PBS, public television. And if I miss anything, I know we'll have a little time later, but I think it'll give everybody a great overview of what accessibility and this process is all about. So for me, access is ensuring that all audiences have the same full media experience. For deaf and hard of hearing, that's captioning, and for blind and visually impaired audiences, that's audio description. Now, I like to think about technology as hardware systems that create and develop and deliver caption files and audio description files, and the human processes that we all use to write and generate scripts. But one thing we all know is true about technology. Technology is constantly changing, right? It always brings with it growing pains, but as we'll see, I hope, it has resulted in a lot of improvements and a lot more access, and that's what we're all about today. So let me give you some useful bullets, I think. GBH and public television were at the forefront of both captioning and audio description. But the government funded and nurtured the development and demonstrated the need for both captioning and audio description. And over time, laws were passed that mandated requirements for both of these services. And these laws detailed which providers had to include captions and which had to describe their programming and how much programming. And it should be noted that PBS was exempted from the laws because they consistently offer captioning and audio description programming beyond what the minimum requirements that the laws that were created were passed for. But today, captioning, we all know, is omnipresent. We see it in restaurants and bars and airports, everywhere we go. And we've seen audio description in the last 5-10 years really dramatically increase the amount of programming that's available on both broadcast television, cable television, as well as today, many of the streaming services. But today, I know we have an audience of documentarians, and they want to know how can we help them make their programs accessible. So with the requirements now for captioning and audio description, what does that mean to you, the content creator? Well, you'll be asked to provide captions and audio description for your films and programs. You must be aware of captioning. That's pretty straightforward. But audio description is the way to ensure that your key visuals, the ones you create and select with such great care to reach your audience, audio description will make sure that the blind and visually impaired audience will benefit and fully get your program. So I'd like to turn to Renee now. Renee is a writer and producer of thousands of hours of audio description, and she's brought with her a clip from Nova, a program which she described. Hey, Renee.
Thank you. The clip we've selected for you today is from Nova's Looking for Life on Mars. And we think it's a good example because it really shows how the audio description track can complement your program narration. And when we play this clip, there's a few things we'd like you to keep in mind. And what it is that at the beginning of the clip, there's very small pauses. And that's where we, as the describer, we have to go in very stealthily, just with the very, very key details, because there's no time for anything else. So in this, you'll notice we'll do a speaker's ID, or we might, for example, there's a line where someone refers to a security blanket, but it's actually their dog. So we want to describe the dog. And then at the end of the clip, there's a longer pause where if you didn't have audio description, you really wouldn't be able to tell what was happening just from the sound effects or the cheering. And in that, we were able to describe some people on the beach wearing masks. This sets it in the pandemic. And then also a little bit about, you'll see a line where we describe them taking a selfie with the rocket exhaust trail in the background. And this would be lost if you didn't have audio description. So I think we're ready for that clip now. Thank you.
Before Perseverance is launched, members of the team install this plaque to honor healthcare workers.
It's a constant reminder that there are people, making sacrifices to make sure everybody is safe and healthy.
Engineer Elio Murillo. Footage shows a rocket launch pad.
From America's shore to Jezero Crater on Mars, we'll begin with the launch of this Atlas V rocket.
The day has finally arrived. Perseverance is on the launch pad. On a nearby beach, team member Elio Murillo, along with friends and his mom, have come to watch the launch.
This is my first mission, and I'm about to see it take off to Mars.
They all wear masks.
I can't describe how excited and scared and nervous I am at the same time. I'm really proud to be part of this team. And despite the pandemic, we have persevered through this together.
Ian Clark holds his dog.
Meanwhile,
grab my security blanket. Let's see if she'll let me.
Other team members like Ian Clark, along with his dog Pixel, nervously watch the launch from home.
Launch director, LD is go, and you have permission to launch.
I think the bouncing of my leg is accelerating as we're getting closer.
That's good to hear, Joshua, right there.
28 seconds to launch.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Engine ignition, 2.
0.
Relation and liftoff.
The rocket launches, expelling fiery exhaust. Ian Clark cuddles his dog. People on the beach point to the sky. The rocket's trail of exhaust forms an arc in the blue sky. The masked observers gaze up. It heads for the clouds. At home, Ian smiles. On the beach, Elio and his friends take a selfie with the exhaust trail in the background.
Wow.
So there's a little taste, and we've included, I think, or you will in the chat, the full version of that program that people can watch. And they can also go to PBS website and really watch a lot of audio description programming.
Awesome. And I know we just have a couple of minutes left, and I'm wondering, Renee, if you have any little details on how to make that work like that. You know, it's like, so it's not intrusive, and yet kind of tells things that people might not see otherwise.
Absolutely. Well, our first priority is we want this to complement and carry your story of your film. And so we want to be objective. We're translators of the images. We don't interpret for our audience. We simply say what we see. And also, you might have noticed we try to not talk over any of the show dialogue unless it's absolutely necessary. You know, and if we do so in a discreet way, only over something that maybe perhaps wouldn't be missed. And then we also try to weave around any essential sound effects, you know, music swells or other really important details that you've added to your film that you want to be there. That's part of the artistry of description, is we really do want it to blend and be a part of your film, so that it simply is a way that someone can access it with their friends, with their family, and on their own.
I'd just like to add one thing, Dave, is that when you watch this clip from Nova and you watch the entire program, there's really a symbiotic relationship between the grace of how Nova describes a lot of the images, makes our job very easy, that we don't have to keep coming in because they do it. And that's something that I think your audience ought to take away. There's a lot of accessibility that you can put in as the producer, as the creator. And that's really what we call universal design, so that everybody has the same access to the right information.
Oh, I like that. The idea that accessibility from the beginning is like a core component of your script and a core component of your production. That is awesome, and a fantastic way to close out, at least for now. So we'll say goodbye to Ira and Renee, and we will welcome Isaac. No, sorry. See, watch me get these things wrong. We actually have Erin, which is the most natural kind of way as we move things, right? We started with kind of what WGBH is doing. So I know, Erin, we get to hear a little more about presenting stations, which is that next step. So Erin, I'm hoping you could introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about how you guys work with this, because I know, you know, as a filmmaker, we're like, tell me what the stations want.
Yes, thank you, Day. I appreciate that. I'm Erin McCormack. I'm the executive producer at WXXI Public Media in Rochester. And yes, you described it perfectly. As a PBS affiliate local station, we sort of play a few roles. So we are a local affiliate with multiple television channels. We're also a production company that produces our own local and regional content that we air on our stations and distribute online. And we are also a presenting station, as you mentioned. So we air locally produced content that independent filmmakers are creating. And we take that, and a lot of times I'm an EP on those projects, working with the filmmakers all the way from development all the way through. And sometimes it's projects they're producing on their own, completely independently, that they bring into the station. So yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about how we work with those filmmakers if you'd like. We are a unique station also because of two other reasons. We have an initiative called Move to Include that the Golisano Foundation, they have started that with us in 2014, and they fund that initiative. It's dedicated to using the power of public media to promote inclusion and eradicates stereotypes and stigma. And we have committed to accessibility and inclusion, just as you mentioned, all the way from the beginning of any production and content process all the way through. So that's a part of Move to Include, is obviously the messaging, but then how we deliver the messaging technically is always top of mind for us. So that makes our station a little bit unique. And this past year, that initiative went national. So we added 5 additional stations to that initiative as well, which was really exciting through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The other thing that makes our station unique is that Rochester, New York has one of the largest deaf and hard of hearing, hearing impaired communities per capita of any region in the US. So we have a very active, very involved deaf and hearing impaired community that we are very lucky to have in our region, who gives us constant feedback, who provides a lot of advisement and a lot of collaboration as we go to talk through some of these issues. And especially for me, as I'm producing things, or our team is producing new projects, how we're going to get them done and make sure they're accessible, especially anything live. It's very important for us that we're working with them along the way. So we have some really special, I would say, advisors and advantages when it comes to accessibility, because we are so close to such wonderful sources in our community. So we really use that to our advantage and try to stay at the forefront with both production inclusivity as well as accessibility in the distribution process. So that's a little bit about who we are. How we work with filmmakers. And the most likely way that you would work with a PBS affiliate station is in that presenting station relationship. So each station will have slightly different expectations from the filmmaker as far as files and accessibility is concerned. Our station, for the most part, takes that responsibility on ourselves as a presenting station. So the filmmaker, we talk to them about the fact that we're going to need a transcript, we're going to need caption files if we want to do audio description. And that was such a lovely way to put it that the last presenters did, that, you know, if you can creatively come up with that audio description file, it really does add to the experience when it comes from that creative perspective. But we're working with filmmakers on all of that through the process. But right now, because we are a station that can provide specific services, we usually take that responsibility on. So what we ask of the filmmaker is a specific and correct transcript. So that's where we ask them to put their emphasis and make sure that it's exactly right and that they've proofread it and everything is perfect. And we take that transcript and we create the closed caption files. We do all the onlining, the finishing, and the audio description file at this point. Doesn't mean we wouldn't take one if you had one. Obviously, if you've gone to the pains to create one and you want to deliver that with the final product, that's wonderful. But as the presenting station, we usually take that on as our responsibility in the distribution process. That's both for local air and national distribution and online. And I'm sure we could have a whole separate forum on online, but right now, the YouTube and Vimeo players don't offer an audio description, button in the same way they do the closed caption. You can add an audio description audio file. And a lot of times what we're doing for YouTube is literally creating another video so that we have one that says audio description, and you can opt to watch that one where that file is incorporated into the audio if you want that experience. So there's some ways to play with it. But right now, pretty much we're focusing on broadcast for audio description and other ways to sort of play with it online. So we did an interesting project with NET Grant Project on Becoming Helen Keller. I asked them to put the link into the chat. I used a new smart player that is really interesting and combines a lot of different accessibility into one player. And I'm thinking, in our research, we're seeing that these kind of players are what's going to be used going into the future. But there is literally a combined transcript highlighting the action in the transcript as it happens, and the audio description that you can hit a button to decide for it to come on and off. and also includes enhanced audio description, which means that the action literally stops down for you to hear a description of anything you're about to see or that you just saw, depending on how it is we want that to go. This is a rough draft of what we gave to NET just as a way to try it, but I thought I'd share it with with filmmakers there, and if they've got questions, certainly, please let me know. But it was a cool experience to go through and deliver everything they needed for that. And then they literally took everything we gave them and were able to incorporate it into that player. So it's pretty cool. And then we're learning that the PBS system now has a player that is going to incorporate audio description and captions online, so that the PBS system, anything that we upload there, will be able to have that functionality as well. So it's really exciting. I mean, it's just as he said in the last presentation. This is moving pretty quickly. This world is moving ahead pretty quickly. Really, what's keeping it back, which Day, you and I discussed, you being a filmmaker, is cost and time. The filmmaker has to build this into their budget. I encourage them to build it into their funding structure. So if look, it's going to take this many days for me to really create the audio description file that I want to, and to get it captioned and to have the transcription done, build that into your plans as you go along. Don't try to wait for the post-production process to say, oh, shoot, I'd love to have $2,500 to do this right, and I never thought about it till now, and now I'm all out of post money, right? If you can think about it, and I know you did a wonderful job coming up with that for your films, but it's either money or time or both to come up with this functionality right now. So the more you can plan ahead to do it, the less of a stress it would be.
Yeah.
What did I leave out?
Oh, I think you actually covered quite a bit, and I know we're running tight on time, but we will be coming back to you because I know I have a ton of questions on how other folks have as well. But I love it because we started talking, first with Ira and Renee, and we talked about what it is and how it works and what it looks like, and then we've been talking to Erin about the way it works with her station and what kind of filmmakers can do and what you have done, and also the changes in technology as well as budget and time. So of course, one of the other steps for filmmakers, right? You just finish your film. The expectation to some extent still is, hey, you finished a film. Aren't you going to take it to a festival? So with that, we're actually going to say goodbye to Erin. Goodbye, Erin.
Thank you.
And we're going to welcome Isaac, who's going to actually talk about that other side. I'm like, because if that's the expectation, let's take a look at that. So Isaac, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to us and, take us on this next part of the journey.
Thank you, Day. I'm Isaac Zablocki. I'm the director and co-founder of the Real Abilities Film Festival. To describe myself, I'm a very pale, I hate to admit it, middle-aged white man with a kind of beige background, I believe, and a blue button down. I'll stop there. But thank you so much for including us on this. And Real Abilities is the largest disability film festival in the world. Our films are by and about people with disabilities and really focus on two audiences. One is the disability audience, and to celebrate the disability audience in the most progressive way we can. And at the same time, find that sweet spot for the secondary audience, which is to bridge gaps with the mainstream and bring the mainstream to where the progressive disability audience is. Through all of this, we've also become very involved. We are not filmmakers, we are exhibitors, we're a film festival, but we've of course become involved with the entire process and have been a part of this revolution that I believe is going on to really raise the bar on presentations of films that goes both at film festivals and beyond. And I have to say, I mean, we're 30, this next month will be 31 years to the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and it's been a long ride, and we're seeing major change. The legal change has been there for pretty much 31 years, but of course, forever evolving. What really needs to happen is the cultural change, and we feel that we are a part of that revolution that's going on right now in cinema. This is part of the whole diversity movement, and credit to our friend Lawrence Carter Long, who likes to say that disability is the D in diversity. So when you're talking about diversity, not to leave that out. We make up 20 to 27%, depends how you count it, of the population. This is a huge buying audience, and this audience needs to feel welcome at cinemas, at film festivals. And for many, many years, that has not been the case. And it's an uphill battle. I just attended last week a major film festival that I was really proud to see that they had many films with authentic representation of disability, but none of them were shown with the disability aids. And the onus was kind of put on the filmmakers. And for some of those films, I know that the disability aids exist, the audio description and the captions exist. So this needs to be a group effort, really. Part of the responsibility is on the filmmakers, and at Real Abilities, for instance, a little perk of the festival is that we create the audio description and captions for all of the films that do not have it. I'm really proud to say that this year, out of our 30 films, we had a record number of films that came with audio description and captions already made, and that was 4 of them. Better than the year before, 4 more than the year before, I guess. And yet, with those accessibility aids that are possibly created, filmmakers are not always using them. Festivals are not always using them. Audiences are not always feeling welcome enough to request it. It shouldn't have to be requested. It needs to be communicated in the right way. And this is something that I love to give the example of when I see at different theaters a sign, if you'd like an audio description device, you can pick one up right here. Of course, audio description is for people who have vision loss and who are blind and could never see that sign. So it's kind of having a thoughtful process. Most importantly is that cultural change I'll talk about that we are learning constantly how to improve that every year at our festival. We're discovering new ways to make our whole experience more inclusive, more accessible. And you have to think about, I mean, the disability world is extremely diverse, and within every disability, it's diverse. And within the full spectrum of disabilities that exist. I mean, we're not just talking about the blind community or the deaf community. We're talking about people in wheelchairs, people with developmental disabilities. And really, we need to keep all of this in mind and pay close attention. And I'm happy to give many tips, and we try to bring this to wherever we go on how to make this the most welcoming experience, how to have the attitude from the beginning. From the beginning, filmmakers, I mean, think about it this way. Our selection committee can't always have people with disabilities on it because most of our submissions don't have these accessibility aids created for it on the submission process. So for filmmakers, have it there from the beginning. Have these accessibility aids available. I mean, technology has done amazing things. Have them available on sets so you can hire more people with disabilities, and let it come also internally. Don't just rely on you know, what you know about disability. You know, if you're making a film and you want to be inclusive towards a community of people with autism, include those people in the process and let their voice be a part of that process.
I love it.
There.
No, I love it. I love what you're talking about, the idea of starting from the beginning and working your way through. And I like the key point that you made, though, that we're always changing and we're always learning because it's a broad community, and, you know, folks aren't going to always get everything right, but that doesn't mean don't do it. You know, it just means that it's constantly changing. So I really love that as next point. And I know I've got questions for you about festivals later on when we get to the discussion section. But for now, we will say We'll talk to you later, Isaac. And so, we've talked about festivals, we've talked about PBS stations, we've talked about WGBH and kind of what kind of accessibility they can provide for your films. So what about the filmmakers, right? So this is that next section where we have Jim LeBrecht and Jason DaSilva. And so let's hear from the filmmakers themselves about experiences about adding accessibility to films and how it operates a little bit. So welcome, Jason and Jim. I don't know if you guys want to take a moment to please introduce yourselves, and then let's leap right in.
You want to go first, Jason?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jason DaSilva. I am an Indian, 42 years old. I'm brown, wearing a button-down shirt. I'm in a hotel room that's fairly spacious. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And this whole conversation is really important. I think it's been needing to go on for a long time. So yeah, I'm excited. So why don't you go ahead, Jim?
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everybody. My name is Jim LeBrecht. I use he, him, his pronouns. I live on the unceded land of the Ohlone people in Oakland, California. I am an older white guy with curly hair, black, squarish, rectangular glass frames, a gray beard and mustache. I have a very appropriate tie-dye t-shirt on today, a blue tie-dye t-shirt, and behind me is a red wall with some artwork and movie posters. And I do want to say this is a great panel to really kind of cover all of these bases here. It's really two other things about myself. I am, along with Day and two other people, a founding member of Forward Doc, Filmmakers with Disabilities working in the doc space. And our website has a lot of great resources there for people who are looking for people to do some of their accessibility. We're at fwd-doc.org. And I also co-directed the documentary CRIP Camp with the wonderful filmmaker Nicole Newnham. So would you like me to jump in here, Day, or you want to start with a question?
Either way is good. I think the easiest one, which I can do, we can start with you, because I know, Jason, you're going to have the same question. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself first, and then I can just dump the questions on both of you at the same time.
You did.
So my name is Jason DaSilva. So as I said before, 42-year-old Indian guy. So I'm excited about this panel because I think, as Jim said, it's a conversation that really has needed to go on for a long time. So Isaac mentioned it's like we've seen this going through and becoming something that's been included in for festivals and things. And now I think for the first time, this is a conversation that's being had with not just the venues, but also the creators. So I think it's a really exciting time where all of a sudden the world is opening up for all of us involved in filmmaking with accessibility.
Fantastic. And I think maybe the easiest place to start would be kind of your experiences about adding accessibility to your films, because I know, Jim, that was a key component, like as part of the production of your film, as well as accessibility for audiences. And then Jason, you have some unique experiences because all your filming was not in the U.S. So I don't know, Jim, if you want to start us off on that.
I'd love to start, and I'm going to call for a clip in a moment, but look, I think that what's most important for any filmmaker is to look at the accessibility needs of your film as not something that you have to do, but something that you want to do. Why exclude a sizable number of people from experiencing your film? I think that I know that your audio description script needs to reflect your artistic intent. You know, you can find somebody who's just going to like describe things, but you're going to find that, you know, it's not an old house, it's an old dilapidated looking house, because dilapidated is really important for you to relate to your audience. So whether you write your script yourself, in the case of CRIP Camp, the script was written ahead of time, and then Nicole, Newnham, and I, and a few other people on our staff went through the script, suggested changes. We didn't like the way they described certain people. We changed that. And what we wound up with was something that we were really, really happy with. But, you know, and the same kind of care for your captioning. Now, what's that all about? Well, there's two ways that people saw words on the screen when it came to captioning. One of them is the traditional closed captioning. And, you know, our film, CRIP Camp, is on Netflix. And they were incredible partners in regards to really increasing the accessibility of our film. Audio description in more languages than they had ever done before. Captioning in more languages than they ever did before. And a script that people who are deafblind can download from the website so they could experience the film. That was beautifully written. So I mean, my hat is going to be always off to them for this. I want to just talk about the fact that we worked with them on the captioning so that it timed out as best as possible. You just didn't want to reveal the joke or the line before somebody actually said something. So we worked with them carefully on that timing. And then there's another part of what you see, which is in the business is called forced narratives. I had never heard the term before. But basically, let's say people who are talking in a foreign language or have a really thick accent, or the recording wasn't very good, you know, and you see their words subtitled. You know, we had a lot of that because there were some people with disability-affected speech for which we were concerned that maybe some folks wouldn't catch what they were saying. So, but the way that it wound up being artistically placed on the screen was in different locations. It really felt like a beautiful, natural coming in and going out that it felt natural and really well thought out. And we really wanted to have as much as we could, do the best job when it came to accessibility. So with those two things in mind, why don't we roll our clip and then we'll come back.
Scenes of 1970s New York City. Billboards, shops, traffic, pedestrians. Judy.
Disabled in Action decided to have a demonstration in New York City in front of Nixon headquarters.
Film strips show people with different disabilities gathering.
We decided that we were going to sit down in the street. We were going to stop traffic. So at 4:30 in the afternoon, we formed this huge circle. We cut off 4 streets.
Anne recounts.
You get the call to action, to the barricades. You know, Judy would call it. I remember being on the ground with these big trucks coming at you. Going, whoa.
Former Willowbrook doctor William Bronston.
It was a very unusual demonstration. I mean, people are not used to seeing a whole lot of folks in wheelchairs, and you had to back up. I mean, you had to back up if you were on the wrong side in front of that young woman.
Photos of Judy protesting, then a news helicopter circles the city.
This is WIN.
They were announcing paraplegics stop traffic in Manhattan.
Photos show traffic gridlock. Judy recounts.
There were only 50 of us, but basically, with the one street, we were able to shut the city down.
Photos of the roadblock, people in wheelchairs and on crutches.
So
That's pretty awesome.
It doesn't, that clip happens not to show kind of what I was talking about, the placement of the words, but CRIP Camp is on Netflix. There's also 2 versions that are on YouTube. And like I think it was maybe Erin or said before, or is it Renee? We have two versions up there. One of them is fully accessible, and one of them is kind of the straight way that you would see without captioning or audio description. And it was kind of Netflix to let it go up on YouTube because so the people who were teachers were able to access the film. Jason.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're up, Jason. I don't know if you want to show your film first or talk first.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. So I'm gonna show a clip of When I Walk. So that was a film I did 5 years ago now. It was done with PBS and at national broadcast, as you know from before. PBS is really great about making sure that the film is accessible, and it was great to work with them. The larger challenge that I had was in making the film. There was a lot of places that I traveled, and traveling through India and the global south, it's nowhere near as accessible as they are here or as they are in North America. So, they're probably like a good 20 years behind where we are. They never had the movement that you just saw with Jim in his film. They never had the accessibility movements that we had here. So things that were challenging in making it. So this clip is going to show you some of the process of behind the scenes.
At the very end, when you're yelling for Paolo, you're yelling like inside the house.
Hey, Paolo!
Like that. Rolling camera and action. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Okay, what day is this?
I won't be able to.
Day 2.
Paolo! Paolo, begin sa gulyo! Makaushir zata!
Trying to do a film.
Hi, Joe. Hi.
Almost third day of shooting. Fourth day. It's all the same. Well, one of the scenes on a beach. It's my wheelchair right there. It's pretty cool. How are you gonna get down the beach? I have no idea.
Yo, man, I think it's enough, man. Just get up and walk.
Living the dream, man. I live in the dream. Okay, come around.
Hello.
He's gonna fall.
Just like, don't. What are you doing? Just pull on me if you're gonna fall. When was the last time you felt the perils of not being able to get somewhere? Sucker! If you want to help me? Yesterday. What do you mean? How's it feel to be behind a camera? Fucking awesome. Rad.
It looks awesome, right?
That looks good. So, but it's not in focus, huh? Huh? It's not in focus.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to share that to show that we deal with the challenges the same way, and in the global south but it's cognizant to think about what people, they don't have so the same way we have a panel discussion discussing these issues here, they don't have that in some of these other countries. So what I've done, so what this is a good segue to talk about what I've created with my nonprofit. It's called the Access Film Fund. So if you can see in the chat, there should be the website there. So it's a fund that just got created this year. It's for people of color with disabilities to be able to get funding towards their film projects, and it could be anywhere in the world. So we're trying to make it so people have the same accessibility to some of the funds that we have here, and they can tell their stories just the same that we're doing here. So I'm really excited to announce that. And yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. I love what you're talking about, what you're bringing up here as a part of that, which is the idea that when it comes to filmmaking and filmmakers with disabilities, we're also not just talking about access. We're talking about accessibility of the product. We're talking about accessibility and access to the process of filmmaking itself. So where it gives people an opportunity to tell authentic stories, and it stops documentary from being extractive, which we know unfortunately it's had a history of in the past when it comes to marginalized communities. So I'm super excited about that. And with that, why don't we bring all of our panelists back and let's get into some down into the nitty gritty details of what we're talking about when it comes to access, because I don't know about you and you guys watching, but man, I've got some questions. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm so glad to have you back. So just a couple of things that I really would love to know a little bit more about, and I'm hoping that I can hear from you guys. And I think one of the first one is what are you looking for when it comes to that kind of a collaboration with filmmakers to actually make the most accessible project and the most authentic project? I know for those of you who work with filmmakers, what are the kinds of things that make it a successful partnering? And when you're working with the festivals, and as well as for filmmakers, what are the things that you're like, all right, this is what I need? So I don't know who would like to start with taking that. I think it's a question everybody's going to have an opinion on.
Well, I'll start it because it's easy, because I think everyone has mentioned it already. I think it's that contact between the audio description writer and the producer and the writer of the content, and to establish that early relationship. What we found is that working with the same client over and over, you really get to know people, and it's an education process for them, so that when they create the next project, they're way ahead of where they were when they came to you the first time, and they understand the process, because it is a process. And Erin hit the nail on the head, took the words out of my mouth. You got to start it knowing from the beginning, hey, we're going to do captioning and description, and we got to build it into the timeline, and we got to build it into the budget, because when people put it in the budget, they take it for real, they take it seriously, and they have to, because that's the only way it gets done properly. And Jim mentioned that, you can get audio description, but I think everyone on this panel would be of the mind that good audio description when you hear it. And we all want to make sure that it's good audio description. So spending time with the symbiosis there of the person who creates the product and creates the audio description, that for me is the key.
We on CRIP Camp, it was very important to us that we had a work in progress screening of the film for the disabled community. So we budgeted in getting a work in progress cut, audio described and captioned. And it was enlightening and very important. And, certainly with a film around disability and the community, that's important. But I would venture to say that doing something like that for almost anyone's film, if you really want to get a sense of your project from people from the disabled community and our unique but important viewpoint, that's not a bad thing to consider budgeting for.
I would say today, I agree with everything, and it's actually helpful for me to hear all this too. But I would also say it's really important for filmmakers at this stage to understand that this is not scary, right? Anything unknown in filmmaking and content creation that's going to cost money and time, people get nervous, right? I don't know how to do it. I don't know if I can do it. Is it going to take me off track? What's it going to mean? And it's just so important now that it's just one of the components that you're thinking about. You're thinking about video, you're thinking about audio, you're thinking about story, you're thinking about your equipment, your cast, and you're thinking about accessibility. In the process, in your crew, in your storytelling, and then also in the distribution. It's just another element. We just need to get incorporated into the process at every level. And it's not scary. And I can talk about it coming to this process sort of from the outside, right? I was in Los Angeles for a while, just in all different aspects, but really just focusing on production, right? In a very small little sort of perspective. And since I've come into the PBS world, and this has just been a given that we will do this, it is happening. It has changed my mindset to say, I know it's happening. So now how do we make that as smooth, efficient, and quality as possible? So I think it's important, for independent filmmakers to start to think about it as just another aspect, not a scary extra thing that it's going to be too cumbersome, but instead that there's been a lot of people who have paved the way in this area, that you can get a lot of great information. And this is not a difficult or scary process in any way. There's a lot of support out there, and it's a component we just all have to consider. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Because I'm hearing two things actually. One, I think everyone's alluded to, which is this is not a nice to have anymore for filmmakers. This is becoming the general practice, that this is included as part of your general deliverables. So it's get with doing this, or you're going to find yourself shut out. And I love the other part that's added to that, which is this is not scary. So I'm gonna say I'm a filmmaker, and I'm listening to what you guys say. I'm like, this is great. I love it. I want to make my stuff more accessible. I want more audiences. What do I do first? It's this magical black box over here, and I'm terrified. So what would some of you guys recommend as the first step? I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do first?
Talk to someone.
Don't make me pick on people.
Talk
if you haven't,
go ahead.
I'll start.
Please.
If you haven't done it before, and to get rid of the jitters, watch a lot of audio description. I think that's the first step, so you understand it. And then it really isn't that mysterious. I mean, yes, to get good description and become good at it takes some time, but it's a process. And the first step is education. You got to educate yourself. What is it? And, we gave you just a little clip. You've seen other clips of what it is, good audio description. But you got to watch enough. There's a lot of nuanced audio description, and there's different types of audio description. There's live theater description, there's broadcast television, there's educational description, there's e-description, there's extended description. And I'm glad Erin talked about, PBS has been working on this player for many, many years, and I'm glad it is. I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. I'm glad you did. It's going to happen, but, technology goes through phases, in times. As I said, sometimes it's painful, but it'll happen.
I know that some people are looking at using artificial voice for audio descriptions. I would say that is, versus not having anything at all, that's probably barely acceptable, but it's really having the human voice, the people that can really bring in the warmth or the character, that is terribly important. So I really encourage people not to degrade this part of their film.
Yeah, Jim, I think that you're right on that. And just for all the filmmakers, a good place to start is just script out your film, like break down transcribe your film and start really thinking of your film in this way before you think about what somebody with a disability would take away from your film, and think of their perspective when watching your film. That's a good way to start.
I think also, as far as, Jim talked a little bit about the artistic process. Think about using captions as something that's a part of the film. I'm a big believer in, I don't know how many of you out there like to watch their Netflix with the captions on, but I definitely do and prefer it. But making the captions part of your film, so it can't be shown without it. I think that's something that can be just so, I've seen it done, so artistically beautiful, and such a great way to start thinking about how your film is being presented.
Look, you know, at Sundance with CRIP Camp, we had one of our early screenings. We had the captioning devices go down, these little boxes, right? And the moderator was a woman who was very hard of hearing, and she couldn't see the film. And as she talked to us on our film, she said, "Do you really want to watch a film by looking down at this box?" And, you know, it's like we thought, I mean, look, we're doing this film on disability. We thought we were doing it right. But in essence, what we wound up being able to pivot with Sundance and Netflix was to make an open caption version. And that's what we showed. We got that a day later. And that's what we chose to show for the rest of our screenings at Sundance. And, you know, for folks out there that are running festivals, I have to tell you that the deaf and hard of hearing community is very tight online. And if you advertise it and if you build in those kinds of open caption screenings into your festival, people will show up.
Yeah, I remember reading something not that long ago about, was it for a lot of more bigger films, they were talking about scripted, but they said more than 50% of the funding comes from subtitle and caption, some of the subtitle and captioned versions of the film. So you get more than half your money by doing that. So I think for documentary filmmakers, I'm like, maybe we should consider that. So I am looking at the time, and while I have tons of questions, I think it's much more important that those of you out there watching this get a chance to ask your questions. And with that, I am going to pass the baton on to Ken, who's actually going to go ahead and read out your questions from the chat so the panelists can basically, let's give you some real answers.
Thank you, Day. And we have two coming from Rachel. I'm going to read the first one and do a quick round of responses on that one, and then I'll go to the second question from Rachel. First question she has is there a specific audio description file format filmmakers should use?
I can answer that question. The audio description tends to, it's just an audio file, but so it's not like there's this special closed captioning file, but what the audio description track is going to be is it needs to go into a mix so that at times you need to dip down the original audio so you can hear the audio description and bring it back up. So what you would be delivering to the sound house or your sound person is your audio description, as usually it's a WAV file. Don't use an MP3. A WAV or an AIF audio file at 48K, 24-bit is ideal. But, that's how it's really made. And then, the audio description track is then available on a DCP and for a lot of festivals. So that's how it gets heard.
Let me say two important notes to add on to that, which is one thing that needs to change that I've personally been fighting for is the DCP menus don't have a simple off and on for audio description. It could only be exported through devices on most systems that I'm familiar with. Ira, maybe you know of more, but having the same way you could turn captions on and off, the media is there. I think the system needs to be more simple to put it on, and we sometimes actually, I think, like CRIP Camp did, we have to create two versions of the film: one with open audio description and one without audio description. Luckily for our festival this year, which we used Eventive, which I think most of you are watching it on Eventive right now, Eventive actually put in audio description availability for this virtual format, and in my mind it's revolutionary and hopefully will change things for festivals, and now really everyone can use it. We tested it out as guinea pigs and it worked perfectly.
Wow, that's great.
Anything anyone wants to add, Ira?
Yeah, I'll just say that I've been in the in this field a long time, and I've given up because players come and go, and they profess to be able to turn things on and off. We've always recommended to clients do an open description product and use that. And even if you have to do a separate link, if you're putting it on a website, for example, because you never know what the home person's setup is going to be, whether it's going to work or not work. So in order to make sure, you know, open description is the way, but there may be a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, that's technology, right? It'll happen someday, right?
I think, yeah, I think Rachel's second question relates to that. If a player or platform does not support closed captions or audio description technology, what is the next best thing you can do to share these with your audience? Anybody?
We had to get creative this year. At Real Abilities, our opening night was a drive-in, and we actually, when you think about it, at drive-ins today, you're getting the sound on your FM radio, and we had to buy devices for cars that needed both audio description and non-audio description versions, and have the film be presented again on 2 different sound channels. So you got to get a little bit creative sometimes, but having multiple devices is one way to go about it. Having different versions of the film and offering them, again, open, like Ira said, like having both, here's a version with the captions open, here's a version without captions. So people can choose and have those options if they need them.
Great. Another question, which is related to the production process. What are some examples of ways I can make room for description and caption during production?
I would think that it's that, I mean, one should always be thinking about it. The same way as my being a sound designer, always think about your sound design in production, but it's in post-production really that, you know, you want to be cognizant of what audio description is going to be. And boy, howdy, you know, if you lingered for another second or so, could make that difference between them having to step on dialogue and not stepping on dialogue. Well, is that going to change my film? Is that going to, you know, nobody wants you to, you know, screw up the pacing of your film, but we want you to be cognizant of this. We want you to very much consider this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The production process, again, this is another element. It's almost like turning on another sense that you have to incorporate as you're going through. And it really does bring out some extraordinary creativity when you think about it that way. We also have ASL interpreters on set where needed, and that if when you're watching them and you're incorporating them into the process, it does give you a sense of, you know, what this is going to be like or feel like to deaf and hard of hearing people. But yes, in the post-production process, I ask that our editors turn off the sound, look at the visual without it on, same thing. Let, you know, have the audio on and turn off the visual. And we find a lot of issues that way, mistakes, but it also really helps inform the captions and the audio description. So there's certainly some things you can do in the production process, but yeah, I have to agree. A lot of it is happening there. I agree with Jim. A lot of it's happening in the post process. And there's a lot of tools you can use, and there's a lot of help and advice you can get. We, like I said, we turn to our advisors to say, like, this is what we're going for. Is this working? And we have a lot of honest, very honest advisors who give us their honest opinion if it is or not. So advice is helpful too.
I mean, beyond making room for the accessibility, I think it's a brilliant exercise. Watch your film without sound. Listen to your film without the visuals, because, like you said, you're gonna be aware of things that you just wouldn't. And oh my God, I'm gonna write that down. That is a great thing to do, accessibility or no accessibility.
I'll also add, include in the entire process, hire cast and crew, people with disabilities, and make it an inclusive environment where everyone can be heard and everyone listens. And I think that's something that really can change attitudes and change the tune of the way films are made. And it's important to point out here that it's not just films about disability that need to be accessible. People with disabilities don't just like films about people with disabilities. It's great to see, but we especially like, I think, films that are on any kind of topic.
And also, I gotta say, when you're having a festival and you're having workshops like this, people with disabilities, are visual effects people, they're sound people, they're editors, and don't just simply silo them into only being on panels around disability. It's important for us to be able to build our careers like other people. And one of the ways of doing that is to be considered an expert. And you are considered an expert if you are seen, not just because you are the disabled person who does this work, but because you were part of this conversation and that your disability was not relevant.
Thank you. And here's another question. It's for Jim and Jason, but I'm going to also include Day in this because I know, Day, you're in the midst of making a pilot right now. The question is, for your next film, what plans do you have in place for assuring greater accessibility? What are you thinking about in terms of greater accessibility for your current or your next film?
Well, I'll start. So for my next film, which is When They Walk, it's a trilogy from When I Walk. And I'm thinking about it in terms of, so it's nice because I'm in production. So I'm thinking about my pacing, but I'm also thinking about timing. So I'm able to do a lot of the work right now, just to give ample time to the shooting and editing. So that's a nice thing about being in production when you're thinking about this, is you have a little wiggle, so you have more wiggle room than post.
So I guess I can take a moment to answer. So I am currently working on a pilot for season, and it is about disability. But one of the things that we did early on is I don't want to hire a consultant with a disability. I want to have a core team that includes people with disabilities. And so I have a producer who is deaf, and trust me, I've been called out on things that I got wrong, and we wanted to have crew that is deaf. And I think one of the things is people worry about how you're going to get it right, or how all of those issues. And I think one of the most telling moments for me was we're filming in 2 locations. We have 2 different DPs at those different locations. One is deaf, and the other is non-disabled. And while we're trying to shoot and trying to get this simultaneous thing going and making it work really well, they're sending text messages back and forth to each other. And I was like, doesn't matter whether you have a disability or not. They both speak DP, and that's what was happening. They were talking about lighting and angles and whatever. And it didn't matter about disability. It's like they were just doing it via text, which worked perfectly. And I think we end up worrying about access and things and making it this big issue. And I think Erin alluded to that, but the idea was, if you hire somebody, people will figure out a way to make it work. You'll figure out a way to make it work. And in the end, I have fantastic footage from two amazing camera folk who were able to coordinate. And it's not because we did anything special. It's because, guess what? We took the chance and hired folks. So I think that would probably be the easiest way to do it, because it makes sure what you're doing is accessible. But it also means as we're moving towards the end and into post and finishing, people are going, all right, what are things I might forget? And that way it also isn't all on one person. So I guess that would be the simple example I have.
Yeah, you ask people, what do you need? What kind of accommodation would you need to do the best possible job? And people, if they've gotten to your door, they probably have experience to be very, very specific and clear and really know this. So, it never hurts to ask. It's not a touchy subject. People want the job.
Did you have anything you wanted to add from your own plans for your next film, Jim?
I don't know what I'm doing next. So I'm involved with some development on some scripted projects, but I'm gonna continue cleaning house after digging up thousands of photographs and stuff from CRIP camp. I'm still
you've earned that right. We only have time probably for one more question. Day, did you want to go out with a final question to the panelists, or we do have one more we can throw in here? It's up to you.
I think it is. I always would rather defer to those watching. So,
okay. The question is, what's the best example you've seen or heard of how any of this is done correctly? Besides your own film, that's cheating.
I was going to say CRIP camp. Just give them a shout out right there.
Thank you. I mean, Day, you're certainly an end user when it comes to audio description. I mean, I know the films that I think that are really exceptional, like Notes on Blindness, but what's on your list?
I'll be honest. I think it varies. I think you'll find different things work better in different kinds of films, right? I love the way the folks do it for Nova, right? Because they're going to have to get in a lot of those kinds of little details. I'm a huge fan, it's not a documentary, of things related to murder and murder mysteries. Well, actually, I do like the more documentary style. I thought Amanda Knox had a beautiful intro for audio description. I think over time, people have their own preferences. There are some folks who want a lot more description, some who want a lot less. I think it also depends on your film. The one I'm working on is a very fast-paced piece, which means we're having to be very careful about getting the audio description in because we don't have a lot of time or space. So I guess my answer is there's not one correct way, and that's what makes this a little bit harder. But I think, like Ira alluded to and Erin talked about, we're always learning. Things are always getting better and technology is getting better. So start at the beginning, watch a lot, see what appeals to you, see what fits your style, right? Because there are different styles of filming and your style of film. And I think you'll get something good. So I'm sidestepping the answer, but I think it does come down to you learning that. Because I can just say, watch these 3 films, but they might be absolutely worthless for the kind of film you want to make.
But if you go to the Notes on Blindness website, they do show different types of examples. So your mic's off, Ira.
Ira, you're on mute.
Sure. No, somebody unmuted. There we go. Am I good? I would just say the best one is the one that I can then talk with somebody who may have been blind or deaf about a program that they watched, and we can converse because they got the entire program. We used to talk about this when we started describing The Simpsons, a long time ago. If people can talk about it at the water cooler and they all get all the jokes because we described them because they weren't in the audio track, that's a good audio description program.
So, and I have one to piggyback off of that. I'm going to go out on the limb and name names. And this will date me, but there was a film called Inception in, I think, 2009, 2010, that is just an incredibly crazy, complicated storyline to it. And the audio description helped me understand literally what was happening. When I was researching audio description, that was one that was recommended to me, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And to Jim's point about not using the robot voice, the voice is absolutely compelling and amazing. And to me, that audio description added a whole other layer to that film, whether or not you're visually impaired. So I think it's awesome, but just an opinion.
And just to give an example also of creative captioning, there's a wonderful short film. There's a feature film called Coda coming out this summer that might be good too. But there's a short film called Coda, C-O-D-A, directed by Erica Davis Marsh. And the captioning, the use of captions in that short film is, beyond being a lovely film, is just so creative. And it's about a dancer, and it actually dances with her and serves as its own part of the film. So check that out.
All right. I think we are at the end. So I just want to thank all of you for a great panel today. Jason, Jim, Erin, Ira, Renee, Isaac, and of course, Day for moderating. This has been a really important, lively, and illuminating conversation. Thank you so much. And I just want to let all of you know that on this panel, that as soon as I'm done, you're free to sign off after this. And in terms of our programming tomorrow, we do have a special two-part forum panel featuring the Independent Lens docu-series Philly DA. And part one of that panel begins at 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So please do tune in for that. Thanks again to all of our panelists, and to you, Day, and to our interpreters, and to our live captioner, and to our audience. We'll see you at the festival. Please, use our hashtag AFI Docs, and you can check out the full lineup at docs.afi.com, as well as all of our virtual events and our in-person events. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.